Hey everyone, Egman here with another video, and today we've got my first Series 12 Slug deck. Really looking forward to playing this deck. I should have done it a while ago because I kept theory crafting about how good the deck was in general, and I just need to sit down and play it, and I'm really happy I did. Also, there was a live stream today as a recording where I played two games with this deck as well. So if you guys want to see that, there will be a link at either the end of the video or in the description below where you guys can see the re-upload. I'm not there. This deck is very grindy. That's kind of like the idea for this deck, is that you just grind out your opponent. You gain small advantage over a long time, and which is kind of slow, but I think it really works out for this deck, and there's some good things for it. So let's just talk about it in general. Also, this is 55 cards right now. I think this deck. There's a lot of cards that you want in this deck, right? And you get a lot of cycles, so you get that consistency anyways. But you can definitely run this card. I think you can run this deck with 60, especially since like you and your opponent both draw a lot of cards with all these effects. And so like there's definitely a chance to mill at your opponent just because you have more cards in your deck at the beginning of the game. So that's definitely something you want to think about. I don't think this deck needs to be a hard 50. Once again, mine's 55, but you guys can definitely modify ratios from there. Just don't feel like you have to be at 50 for this deck. I don't think it's necessary. But it has this on the front side. When this card attacks, you and your opponent draw one card. If you have 3 or more green energy, when you activate a Rejuvenate skill, draw 2 cards and flip this card over. And then when your life is at 4 or less, you and your opponent draw 1, and then you switch up to 2 of your energy to activate and flip this card over. So it has like this really nice thing where you can choose one or two ways to awaken this leader, especially like with Rejuvenate. You can start with this leader having like a bunch of like life, and then it's also on the backside, so 20k, which is really interesting. So it has this permanent: if your opponent has 7 or fewer cards in their hand, this card gets minus 5k power during the battle on your opponent's turn. So it just becomes a 15k leader if your opponent has like once again 7 or less cards in their hand. But it's still a 20k beater on your side, and you're gonna, if your opponent has 7 or less cards in their hand, that's because they're going really greedy and just dropping a lot of cards. So it's fine from that way. Either you win by either like your opponent just over combos and then you lose it anyways, or not. And it has the same thing. You and your opponent both draw 1 card, and then activating once per turn. If your opponent has 10 or more cards in their hand, play up to 1 mono green slug army with any cost of 2 or less from your drop area. So really nice there too. You get free card advantage for just doing that, and that's really the thing, right? Like just being able to play something for free is nice. Being a 20k is on your side, and most of your opponent's turns is really good. And it's just kind of it's weird though, right? Like in like the number one rule in like card games is like do not give your opponents more cards, right? And not like breaking that rule, bending that rule, you kind of have to have some kind of insane stuff going on, and there's a bunch of insane combos and stuff with this guy. So for turn 1, we have 3 cards that we can play. Well, technically 2.5. So first, we run Wings. I don't know if we should run Wings, but I think he's fine. I think you're okay to run him. The thing with Wings is that a lot of our cards have as much specific energy as they do energy costs, like this other Wings. So we don't actually get any less because you can't go less than the 3 specific green energy. But there are exceptions, like Lord Slug, Return to Form, Angela, and then also our big 5-drop can become a 4-drop. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, I think he's fine. The more the reason you want to play this guy is just because you want more 1-drops on your board, right? And there are only 2 1-drop greens that are really worth it are Wings and Lord Slug, the new one from the set. So you just want to run this just for more options to play for free from the ways you play stuff. But we also have this Lord Slug, Conqueror Restored. So if your leader is a Slug army, when this card is played from your hand, and it's strictly from the hand because there are ways to play it from the drop area, you and your opponent draw 1. At the end of your turn, your opponent chooses up to 1 card in their hand placed at the bottom of the deck. So this up to 1 means that it's your opponent gets to choose, as far as we know, right? Unless this was a translation error, which I don't. It might have been, but it's your opponent chooses how many cards they put back, and so they can choose 0, and so they get free card draw, which sounds bad. I know it sounds bad, but it's fine. It's okay for this. From my own experience, it's okay. Unless like your opponent is playing like Victory Strike and they want it, like they need to find it, I think it's okay for that kind of stuff. But it also has this really amazing active main of if your leader card's on a Slug Army card and your opponent has 7 more cards in their hand and 1 or more energy, choose up to 1 mono green Slug Army with 19k power or less in your hand and play it. You can activate the active main skills of this copies on copies of this card for the turn. So you just get a free play stuff from your hand. 3 drops. So that's really good, right? Being able to just play this and play a 3-drop is already very good power for this deck, and you get like as much card advantage as your opponent does, so it just really works out. And so the cards that we can play from this, we can play this guy if we want, because it's just with 19k power or less. But the big boys are, so Wings, this one just has bonds too. If this card's in rest mode, mono green Slug Army cards in your battle area can't be KO'd by your opponent's skills. So this just helps out like keeping your guys alive, including Lord Slug, because like this has unique but doesn't have barrier. We also have Angela, Invader Earth. So this one's really nice in specific matchups. It's not best. It's okay in some, but not in all. But if your leader card Slug Army and all your energy is mono green, when this card is played from your hand, activate the skill. At the end of the turn, if you have 6 or fewer cards in your hand, your opponent has 10 or more in their hand, you draw 3 cards. So just being able to draw 3 cards for free is fantastic, and you get this 19k body out too. So like it's fine. Like the big thing about this deck too is that it's really easy to KO 2-drop Unisons, like just because you put a lot of bodies out there, and like even though your opponent has card advantage, they can't combo stuff, so they have to like use negates and stuff. We also have probably the best one here, Lord Slug, Thwarter of Plans. This is a really good card. So it has Deflect, it's a 15k, Auto Bond 2. If your leader card is a Slug Army card, when your opponent uses a card in a combo, you place that card in your opponent's drop area. If you do, you and your opponent draw 1 and negate the skill for the turn. So on the surface, it feels bad, right? Because like you don't get to, like unless like you snipe a super combo, like your opponent just gets a free card draw, right? But you also get the card draw, and it's on both players' turns, and it's very good. It's just like you just get your free card advantage for having this guy out, and it has this: when this card is removed from your battle area by opponent's skill or KO'd, if your opponent has 7 more cards in their hand, play up to 1 green Slug Army with any cost of 1 from your drop area. So it's just like you can desensitize, like make it so your opponent doesn't want to KO this guy too. Like if you have some 1-drops in there, like it's really easy to get a couple of these guys on the board, and then you just get a bunch of free card draw for your opponent trying to combo. So it is based on your opponent trying to combo, but that's also good because then it means their hand size is really healthy, which means you can activate a lot of your skills. So it just kind of feeds into itself. It's a really good card. Trust me. It's just, you just play a couple of these guys, they stick out. You draw like 2 or 3 cards every turn just because of this guy. And then you have like giant hands too. Like I was playing in one of my games where it was me against Launch. We literally had like 18 card hands. It was huge, right? But really good card, and you can recycle stuff with him too. Then we also have Lord Slug. Again, this is like from set 4, very a old card, but Bond 2. When you play this card, if your leader card is Slug Army, choose up to 1 Slug Army in your drop area with any cost of 3 or less, play it, then choose one of your energies to switch to active mode. So if you've got Wings out for 2 energy, you get to play this big 20k body, and you get to play a 3-drop from your drop area, which means one of these Lord Slugs, Thwarter of Plans, you get out for free. You don't get Angela, or you can get Angela, but you don't get the draw 3 because it has to be played from their hand. But you can also get Wings as well. You can even get like Lord Slug Return to Form and go from there, or even if you need like a Lord Slug, I don't know. There's a bunch of things that this guy can use, and it's just like really good for 2 energy, playing a 20k and a 15k, and then this one like draws you more cards. Is very good. And then we also have our big boy Lord Slug, Monstrous Muscle. Jeez. So it's Deflect, Double Strike. When this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards, KO them. Then choose up to 1 of your opponent's Unison cards and remove 2 markers from it. So you can play this for 4 energy as long as you have Wings out, and you can normally be kind of greedy with that, because if you're playing it smart, you have your Unison out, and then you can have like on turn 4 you can have your Unison out, and then you have like a Dormant Potential in hand. And I've only used Rejuvenate once, and it kind of seemed worth it. It was more of the reason just to like awaken with a lot of health. That was like the big thing, because like your opponent had to like over combo to hit into your leader, but also being able to just draw 2 cards with the Rejuvenate way to awaken is good too. But in general, like it just felt good. Like this, you can drop this guy, and it has this auto once per turn. When your opponent activates a counterattack, your opponent chooses 6 cards in their hand, discards the rest, then you and your opponent draw 1. So just being able to do that is also very, very handy. Resetting their hand, and it discards them too, not like put them under their deck. So Late game, it's really good to do this, and then if you have like you get really big boards for this deck too, so you're able to just use. It's super easy to get the Celzina, right? This should be a no-brainer that you play. If you own this card, you play it in it. But like you can just say, okay, like you got this 5-drop, the 4-drop, and the 3-drop, boom, that's right, or that's 12 right there. Or you just have like a bunch of these 3-drops. It's super easy to get this guy out. That's the point, and you get to turn 5 anyways, and so you can just like have a big 4. Like this is your win condition, which is also fine for you to do because like it's you cycle through so much to your deck anyways that it's hard not to find this guy, and like especially because we use like this great Saiyaman as our super combo, it's easy to find this guy. You'll find this a lot of the time. It'll just be the way you end the game. If you don't like this guy, like I could see Banisher Fu. Not Banisher Fu. The 6-drop Fu could be also a really good end condition because like you get a really big drop area, and then if you have like a really wide board, and then your opponent can't use like negates anymore, then that's really good too. I'm gonna put that in there right now. Actually, we're gonna put it live. All right, we're gonna put that Fu in. Fu 6-drop. Fu 7-drop. 10-drop. There he is. Fu Shadow Mystery. Yeah, you should play this card if you don't have the Xeno. Like it's super good. You just get the turn 6, and then you drop it, and then you've got a wide board, and your opponent has like a bunch of dead cards in their hand they can't use anymore. It feels really good. So that's another potential way you can win the game. If you, like this could definitely be like a budget version of Cell Secret Rare if you don't own the card. But all right, that was that. All right, so we play green cards. So we play green Unison. This one's okay. I wish there was like another card with Rejuvenation just because we could run more of it. He can kind of die, and if you want more Unisons, you definitely can. I usually like to run like 7 Unisons, about 4 of my main one, and then some backup ones. So definitely run 4 of this guy. For backup ones, Raditz could be cool just because you're able to get critical and stuff, and you have a really big hand size, and then like late game you can make it so like your opponent like discards cards and stuff. Demigod can be really good too, always. And this Golden Frieza can be nice too, because your opponent can't attack with battle cards unless they choose one of their cards with an A cost 2 or more and place in its owner's drop area. So even though you're giving your opponent like a lot of card advantage, if you don't give them a lot of tempo, then you're still winning because you tempo out of stuff. That's what you do. You lose card advantage by it's kind of like mid-range anger, right? Like the idea is that there's a trade-off, and so for this deck you trade off card advantage, but not because you lose cards, but by your opponent gaining cards. So you're able to cheat out 3-drops, but only because your opponent has a lot of cards to deal with. But you still get to play more things than your opponent can, right? And then they stick on the board, and they have all these on-board effects. That's kind of why this deck is kind of good. But why it's not intuitive of why it's kind of good, right? Like if this deck was instead of like you draw a card, if it was you discard a card to do the things that are happening, then it'd probably be there'd probably be just some merit for this deck being kind of good still. So what else we got? So we got Unison. So of course we run Frieza, run 3 of them because we only run 4 of this guy. This guy's also pretty okay. So it has this +1. Choose 1 card in your hand, place under it, and then you and your opponent draw 1. And then you choose 1 green battle card with any cost of 1 in your hand and play it. At the end of your turn, your opponent chooses up to 1 card to their whatever. So it's just like if you need to play Unison turn 1, like if your opponent's like really aggressive, you can just play this for 1, and then you can get like your Lord Slug Conqueror restored, and then you can make your opponent draw 1 from this and 1 from this, and then you can play like this big 3, your 3-drop here. Or if your opponent has a lot of cards in hand, you can play Angela, and then you can have like your Dormant Potential set up in case your opponent's going to do stuff, and like Frieza. So it's fine. It's a fine Unison for what it does. And it doesn't generate card advantage for you, but it does do this. So, once again, I've done Rejuvenate once. It was kind of worth it. You don't like rejuvenate every turn or anything like that. Nothing crazy, but it's all right. Last cards we want to talk about. So super combos: 2 Great Saiyaman and 2 Dr. Gero. You can maybe just do 4 Saiyaman. He's good. He just cycles through your stuff. Gero's really good for helping you find cards and put them in your drop area if you really need them. I don't know if this is needed, but you can, like if you need like a Roshi or something, or if you need like a Meta Matcha, you can do that too. Meta Matcha is really good because you just, for 1 green, you get to draw 2 cards and Self-Awaken and also play a token, which is like a free 5k later, so he's fine. I haven't used him yet, but it's just because I had better plays. But he could be really good just late game, or like if you're in like awkward situations, just being able to play him, and like drawing 2 cards for 1 energy is a lot, so that's probably fine already, but that's just something to consider. loyal, super good blocker. You can also it's good because it's also like something you can play with your active man and your leader, so you can just play these guys for free if you need to. Roshi, obviously really good. You can get is it green? Yeah, 1 green extra card. So it's normally dormant potential, but you can also get sacrifice if you need like a hard negate. This is also a really good negate for the deck because it self-awakens you if you kind of need, like, you can give you kind of awkward situations if you're Great Saiyaman, if you're only at like 5 life, but you can use sacrifice and you can, use a counter for free and you get card draw for it, and you don't have to be sparking for it either. So there's that. Shocking Death Ball can definitely be in the deck too. We kind of generate a good amount of cards in our drop area because we draw so much. But I think Sacrifice is just like slightly better. But Shocking Death Ball is also good. So if you just like that card better, just do it. And I think that's all the cards. Assimilate's broken in this deck. Like, just being able to find this at turn 1 every time is really good. So I could also, by the way, I could see this deck like an aggro cell, by the way. Just being able to play this for 1 and then, like, sure, your opponent draws a card first, but, like, being able to make your opponent, like, being able to just play a 3-drop from your hand is great. So I could see that. Like, you can just play Angela. You can just play 3-drop Angela with the aggro version by doing Assimilate into this into Angela. It just seems good, right? So you can do that. You should probably do that. You will do that. And I think that's it. I think that's everything from this deck. There's some sideboard stuff. If you want super combos that aren't Dr. Jiro, you can also think of, there's the Slug one, which doesn't do anything, but you get to, it's a 2-drop. You can keep reviving it with your leader's backside. And then, when your opponent activates a counterplay, they choose 2 cards in their hand and discard them. So that has some potential. You have Defensive Stance Piccolo, which is just a green Namekian, so you can find it with Assimilate. Similar with Namekian Duel Sionel, which just, you have a green Namekian leader, so you can just make it at 5 or less life. So I'd probably choose this one over Jiro if anything. I just like Great Saiyaman too, just because it lets you cycle. We don't necessarily need any cards in our deck, but it helps just get rid of dead cards, obviously, and dig deeper, especially since we're running 55 cards instead of 50. And just one quick afterthought too, we've got this yellow Lord Slug. So this is from the draft box, and Lord Slug got this whole yellow archetype, but it has this active main for 1 yellow. If your leader card's yellow Slug Army, and you discard this card from your hand, play up to 1 Slug Army card with any cost of 1 from your deck, then shuffle. So you can find Wings or your new Lord Slug Conqueror restored from your deck. You don't get the draw 1 from this because that's to be played from your hand. But just being able to find this turn 1 and be able to use the active main if you need to. I think Assimilate's just better to find this card, but there is some potential here. And then also has this really nice, permanent bond too. When this card is in rest mode, your opponent can't add cards from their life to their hand using non-leader card skills, which mean your own skills. So you're able, like, if you have this Lord Slug Thwarter of Plans out, and then they try to draw, use your effect to make them, discard their card, and then we both draw 1. Your opponent doesn't draw 1, but you still get you still do as much as possible. So you're able to get like a +2 because you're able to get rid of the card in their combo and make them not draw, but you get to draw a card. So that's just really good, right? So if there's a way to get this out consistently, I think that's an option. That things like this Angela, you need to have all mono green energy, and this Metamacha also has to have all mono green energy. And this, no, they just have to mono green leader. So this wasn't, some cards need it. It's not necessary, but it's something that to think of. But I think there's some potential there though in general, just being able to have this guy out, and then if your opponent can't swing into it, then you're feeling good. You can't play it for free with this one because it's a 20k and this needs 19k. But if you do have Wings out, it becomes 2 less. And there's also, do you have to have like is it a 1-drop? Does this say 1-drop green? Yes. So there's like a lot of reverse synergy just because a lot of these just call out specifically green cards. But there's some potential, all right? I've talked about this deck too long, but it's hard to not to because there's just so much stuff to talk about with this deck, and you can see with the matches, there's just so much stuff to read. So that's the deck. Let me know what you guys think about it. I think in general that this deck is more viable than it first seemed. I think there is some competitive thoughts to it, and it's not as... on the surface, it looks really bad because you're giving your opponent cards, but it's not as bad as it seems. That's my verdict. Not as bad as it seems. All right. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you all next time.